Hello, I'm Alma Schneider. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and the proud mother of 4 children, one of whom has Prader-Willi syndrome.
And I am Iris Miller. I'm a certified rehabilitation counselor and the proud mother of 2 children, one of whom has quadriplegic cerebral palsy and is nonverbal.
In this podcast, we discuss the uncensored truth about raising children with disabilities.
Prepare to laugh, cry, and hopefully learn something new.
This is 2 Moms, No Fluff.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to 2 Moms, No Fluff, the podcast in which we discuss the uncensored truth about raising kids with disabilities. My name is Iris Miller, and I'm here with my lovely partner, Alma Schneider.
Hello, welcome everybody. I have a confession to make because Iris just had a confession. We just finished our episode with Andrea Roberts from amothersrest.org. And as soon as we finished recording, Iris confessed her stress about getting respite, going away when her daughter was younger. And we're going to have this impromptu episode because we think it's really important to talk about all the feelings about leaving our children. We've had episodes on travel, we've had episodes on taking vacations without our kids, but we're going to delve a little bit deeper right now into what goes on in our minds when we feel that we want to just get a little time away, and if we are willing to do that or not. So Iris, thank you for disclosing what you just did to me. Do you want to repeat to our lovely audience what you said?
Of course, because everything I share with you, Alma, in privacy, I share with the rest of the world as well.
That's what makes you such an open, honest, authentic person.
Yes, and the podcast being really about all the truth about raising our kids. So yes, and I want to say, like, Alma, you introduced the topic of like going away from our kids and my fears about that when my kids were younger. I'm just like, younger? I still have it. Yes,
my daughter, you went away.
But I did when I did go away a few times. That's also a story by itself. But yes, I think that when we were just recording the episode about A Mother's Rest, an amazing organization, which I hope everybody here would take advantage of and enjoy their retreats. I was telling Alma that for me, when my daughter Karen was younger and my son was younger as well, I felt that it is not only unnecessary for me to go away, but if I was away from my daughter, I felt an ache to be back, to be with her. And I think that the possibility of going on a weekend or a retreat or going places without her only increased my misery and anxiety rather than staying home with her. And I'll go into more details about that. Alma was like, "You're crazy." So
I did not say that. I did not say you were crazy. I was just baffled because I couldn't relate, and I wanted to hear more about that. And as always, if we're feeling something, I'm sure that other people are feeling it too. So when you brought up that you couldn't even imagine the thought of going away when Karen was 4 years old, that it would have been much worse for you, for your anxiety or your stress, that really struck me. And I'm sure that a lot of other people feel that way. The truth is, I didn't go away either. I never went away by myself. The longest I went away, the first time I went away was about when Lincoln was maybe 10 or 11. And I went to Spain and for a week, and it was a huge deal for me, a huge deal. And I think that a lot of it had to do with this idea that, well, one, that I didn't have anybody to care for him. We don't have grandparents. Sadly, all of my husband and my parents passed away. So we don't have anybody to watch the kids. There are, it didn't work out that my siblings could do that or would do that, or friends. That's a lot to ask. And it never occurred to me to ask anybody to do that, because to me it was such a, it's so all consuming and involved to care for him back then, especially, that I couldn't even imagine asking someone to step in to do that. Not, but I didn't have the feelings of an ache, of an ache and a longing to be with him at all. I was very happy to be away in Spain. Um, it was more the fear that nobody could do it and nobody would do it. And that, even just articulating that right now, makes me feel the need to tell parents of young kids exactly what Andrea Roberts of A Mother's Rest was just saying. For new parents, it is vitally important to make getaways and retreats and respite a normal, healthy part of your regimen for self care, starting from very early on, to make sure that you have supports as much as you can, to have supports in place to be able to care for your children. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about your what's going on, because I feel like mine are more practical reasons why I couldn't go away. Like, my husband was at work, nobody was home to pick Lincoln up. I mean, I could have done it, but I didn't, because it was too overwhelming for me to even think about. But maybe there was some psychological stuff in there that it was just going to be too hard and I didn't want to deal with it. So
Yeah,
up
I
to
think
you.
that I used the term with you earlier, and I can repeat that people used to tell me in the early years that listen, this is a marathon run. You're dealing with this as if it was like a sprint. You have to channel your energy so it lasts for many years. The caregiving never stops, etc. But for me, it was just the doing, the being, the time that I spent with my kids was almost therapeutic. It was channeling the anxiety and the fears of the unknown with the
Mhm.
Karen and the complexity of her disability to things that I can do right here and right now. And my goals were fairly simple. I just wanted Karen to be happy as she can be on any given day. But by being there with her, I could assure myself that this is her reality. And when she was well, I was well. And
Mhm.
this is, I know that there's a lot of trauma intertwined into this relationship. But for me, the happiest time of the day was, and we were using the family bed. So to go to bed at night and have both my kids next to me, kind of hugging my children next to
Mhm.
me, and knowing that we're safe and all is good and we survived yet another day. And that was my kind of happy place.
Mhm.
And I don't know how other parents are dealing with this, but I think that it's okay also to be stressed out about leaving your child behind. And sometimes if this is a stressful experience, maybe that's not the type of rest that you need. That
Mhm.
people also need to listen to their own heart. And I think for many, many years, like my husband and I couldn't go on a date in the evening. And for the majority, the truth is we still rarely ever do. But we found other ways to have quality time together as a couple without having that stress of leaving the children in the hours that used to be at least the most complicated and difficult, at least with Karen. So it's just being flexible in terms of how you define quality time,
Mhm.
romantic outings, etc. So you can kind of incorporate it into your
Mhm.
new crazy life, I guess.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
that's a really good point, that it doesn't have to be the prescribed what everybody thinks respite is, which is going away. I went away that first time for a week, and it was amazing for me. Up until that point, I didn't have babysitters, and people would say, just get a caregiver. I didn't trust anybody to be able to know how to deal with Lincoln, or to I was more worried, and we've talked about this in previous episodes. I was more worried about the people caring for him, that he would act out in a way that would freak them out. I wasn't, so it's, it's just interesting to hear because I was more worried about them than I was about Lincoln. I knew he would be fine. I was worried about the people taking care of him. That the people who I felt close enough to ask to be with him, I didn't feel comfortable enough with them getting, having to deal with his escalating behavior. And that's a problem in itself because that limited me. That really limited my comfort level in going out, in getting a 9 to 5 job, which is something I would have really liked. It limited me. And going back, I wish that I had learned about programs. There are many programs out there, they're called respite programs, or finding people through Perform Care, the Department for Developmental Disabilities. There are programs that have qualified people to do that. I was too scared to I didn't know if they'd be qualified enough, and I found out much later on that they would have been qualified enough, and that there are some great people out there who would have been able to handle him. But I didn't talk to people, and that's, talking about finding your community and sharing information. For me, and I know it's different from what you're describing, like you had a whole other set of needs, and you found ways that you felt comfortable. I was drowning, and I was barely keeping my head above water, and I wish that I had found these kind of, opportunities for respite and for just getting away, because it was a lot for me. And so for some people, exactly what you're saying, there might be other out of the box ways to feel safe and to feel comfortable with your child, with you not going away. For me, I needed to get the hell out of Dodge, and I didn't. And all the more reason for people to talk to other people, to learn about programs, to find people who are qualified to be with your child, so that you can feel like my child is happy, with this person. My child is enjoying themselves, and even having like having face. We now have the ability to connect with our kids during, with FaceTime, with Skype or Zoom, whatever it is. So there's so many opportunities. But I just, I forced Iris to jump into this unexpected impromptu episode, because it was something that we haven't really, delved into about respite.
And Alma, as we're talking, I want to kind of rephrase something I said earlier. And so
Mhm.
I was talking about that quiet time, reading a book with my kids or listening to an audiobook. We're all snuggled in bed, ready to
Mhm.
finish another day. But
Yeah.
I want to explain that then night shift would begin. And night shift for us is just my daughter like would wake up so many times, still wakes up so many times during the night with the muscle spasms, with pain, with just the normal need to rotate and change positions during the night. And we had to constantly care for her needs during the night. And I for many, many, many years, I don't know how I managed to kind of wake up and be compassionate and kind and good and the best kind of mother that I wanted to be at night as well. But then I don't know if it's aging or time or just just depletion. I one night I remember it specifically, and Karen does too. She kept on waking up, and every time I would fall asleep after I rearranged her and helped her, she would wake me up again and again and again. That was our normal, right? But then I somehow lost it, and I started crying in front of her, and I was like bawling, and I was like, what do you want from me? I can't do this anymore. I can't, like, just let me sleep. And this was totally kind of irrational and very not a good mother like or a typical mother like. I was just out of it. I was just so sleep deprived. I couldn't even think clearly anymore.
Mhm.
And when that episode happened a couple of times, maybe even 3 times, I was
Mhm.
just like, I can't do that anymore. I am disqualified from this nighttime position. I cannot trust myself to
Mhm.
be the good enough mother that Winnicott was talking about,
Love
that I
Winnicott.
expect myself to be at night.
Yeah.
Then a whole new journey started for a family trying to get the state to give us a nighttime aid.
Mhm.
And that's a totally different episode, because it took about 5 years until we got help. And the magical help wasn't that we managed to convince the court to force our insurance company to help us. It
Mhm.
was moving to another state.
Right.
But in that process, a few things happened. I had to uh, realize my own human limitations, and
Mhm.
there is a
Yep.
limit to how much a person can function without sleep.
Yep.
And I also had to let other people into one of the most kind of challenging shifts, and caregiving tasks of our lives,
Mhm.
in a way that is not only letting them care for my child while I'm, in the kitchen washing dishes and listening in. I was supposed to sleep while someone else is caring for her. And that
Mhm.
was a really, really interesting experience for a person who was so uptight and controlling about every little aspect of my daughter's life. And what can I say? It's been an education. And
Kind of positive. It because that was something that you just described as the most positive, happy time of your day, being
yeah,
in bed with
yes.
them.
And I know, and I still miss it. And I need to remind myself that I miss the beginning portion of the night.
Right.
The rest
Right.
of it was pure torture. And I do know and acknowledge that. And I'm
Mhm.
grateful for the people that are now our night shift people. They don't go to sleep. They're constantly awake and caring for Karen, which then
Mhm.
you can care for her from a realization, a cognitively functioning brain. It's not that you were woken up and you're not sure why is she screaming and what's hurting her, etc. It's a different level of care when the person is fully awake and ready to kind of answer a call, I would call it. For us, it changed a lot of things, but still going back, can I tell you that I could speak to my old self and convince her to let go? I don't think so.
I don't
I
think
was just on a one-track mind that this is my life's duty, or like this is what I'm here for. There is nothing more important or meaningful
so.
for the
Mhm.
person that I am to do at any given moment than caring for my children.
Mhm. Okay, and that's you know
Extreme.
well, but that was your path. That was your path as you as an individual. But you took once you realized that you couldn't do it anymore, you did pass it on. You didn't continue. You chose. You made the decision to have someone else do it, even though it was something that you felt strongly about doing yourself because you knew you needed to do it. You needed the rest. You needed the sleep. For you, that was enough respite, I guess, to have the sleep.
Yeah, I just our kids are our best kind of mirrors, and seeing myself in my daughter's eye, seeing Karen panicking by
Mhm.
looking at me crying in the middle of the night and like kind of begging her to go to sleep, and telling her that I can't take care of her anymore. This is unheard of, right, for me to say something like that to my own child. But I
Yeah.
did. I was just out of it. And seeing that, I understood that I am no longer who I want to be for
Right.
him, and I cannot do it anymore.
Okay.
Um,
So, what allowed you to go on that trip with me to Chicago where we decided to start the podcast? What
okay.
propelled you to be able to go?
So two things. First, we already had night shift in place.
Okay,
So
that's true.
at that point in time, there was 24/7 care for Karen, and I knew that you know that we are good. We had people that we trusted at that point in time. I'm thinking, in retrospect, if every time I felt like going away, we would probably not only have a company and a podcast, we would probably have I don't know. It's just a lot of good things came out of that one first vacation of me
Mhm.
going for 2 nights away. I think that was magical. I think, Alma, that it was also the pandemic, being like really almost locked in for a year and a half by that time, um, was also kind of pushing me to get out. That it was just, even for me as a as a homie that I am, I needed to get out, and I felt it. And I
Hmm.
think that this shows me that other moms might be really terrified of leaving their kids today, now, this year, but they
Uh-huh.
will be fine going on vacations later on when their kids are older. And that is legit. I know that
Yes.
we want to help the moms by providing them, a respite opportunity, a vacation location that they can, hang out in. And it's
Hmm.
great. But not every mom can like have the emotional stamina even to step away from her role. And I get it. I was that mom and I couldn't let go. I was just too terrified of letting go.
Hmm.
And some of it might be, all the trauma related to my daughter's like birth and hospital stay and all that. There's many kind of psychological explanations and reflections that we can
Hmm.
make here. But I can say for sure that this year I had an emergency unplanned trip that I left for like almost 10 days to Israel. And every time I would like do those Zoom calls with my daughter, she was like, yeah, we're having fun. It's so much nicer at home without you here, and things like that. And that was like such a closure for me, that
Good.
we reached that point in time and place that she really didn't need me. She was
Yeah.
better off without me in the house. I was just like, this was a huge victory for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that the key thing here is don't beat yourself up if you want to, if you feel more comfortable staying at home. And it's really important to have choices and know that there are resources available that you want to be aware of to be able to go away if you one day are ready to, so that you're preparing for that, so that if you mentioned you had a crisis and you had to go to Israel, or it was very important for you to go to Israel, had you never been away before, that might have been a lot harder for you to get away for a trip that was really important for you to make. And because you had these things in place, you had the night care, you had been away before, and you knew that the world didn't end when you went away. Maybe take small steps to get to that point. And it's reminding me of how, when people talk about having their disabled children who become adults and they don't um, allow for some form of independence where they're going to live by themselves. God forbid the parent dies and then all of a sudden they're in a group home and their life is completely different from one day to the next. That's traumatic for those people who have to have that sudden change. So it's really important to think about, just to have in your mind and plan a little bit for the need to go away. Even if you don't feel that you need, quote unquote, the respite, it's important in a situation like yours, what you're describing. She was fine by then because you had gone away a few times and she was a little bit older. So, you know, something for us to keep thinking about and talking about. And I'm really hoping that people listening to this will let us know, their feelings about going away, and if they would have done things differently when their kids were younger. And I bring this up because Andrea Roberts of A Mother's Rest was talking about, for new moms, as much as possible, get your respite, get away so it's a normal part of your routine, your health self-care regimen. And there are different ways to do it. It doesn't mean that you have to go away for a whole weekend, for 3 days. It just means that that is something that is necessary and not should not be considered an indulgence or you know neglecting your kid. It is a necessary part of parenting in an extreme situation.
I have a question for you, Alma.
Uh-oh.
So you're telling us about how you were worried about the caregivers, people that
Mhm.
you left to care for Lincoln and their mental health.
Yes,
So
yes.
I am wondering, how did this experience go for you, at least in the first few times that you went away?
uh to be honest, it wasn't so good. And some things happened that did make me feel like, oh, I can never go away, or it made it harder to go away. My son lashed out verbally at people, and it made me very uncomfortable. Um, so it wasn't perfect by any means, but I did it. Um, I remember one of the first times I went away was for a conference about his syndrome. So it wasn't like I was going to Hawaii, sunbathing, drinking frozen pina coladas on the beach. I was at a damn, Prader-Willi syndrome conference in Pennsylvania or something. And it was bad. It was a little traumatizing for me what happened when I was gone. And we're talking about one night of, so it wasn't easy. Um, but and it deterred me from really taking advantage and doing this more. But then I started going away, and that was with my husband. So we started going away separately, so that I felt the most comfortable with my husband being home. So that's how I started, going away and getting the respite. I knew that he would, hold down the fort, and if Lincoln lashed out at him or did something to him, not a big deal, because that's his father, and he wasn't going to be judged you know, uh, or self-conscious about being with my son at another time. So that was my little journey. And now I go away quite a bit. I still feel a little bit like, oh, it's very, I still feel sometimes like it's indulgent, but I have to remind myself that it's not, and that I deserve this and I need to. And why can't my husband stay with him? And he goes away too. We've talked about this in other episodes. He goes away on trips with his friends. He goes away on business, sometimes, and he's getting that kind of respite from being away on business. So I try to remember that. And yeah, that's been my little journey with it.
Yeah, I do think honestly that some of our world travel started because my husband and I liked traveling, and we knew that it's our current constellation. We cannot like live without the kids. So we basically started dragging them around to all of our trips. And
Mhm.
even though it was very complicated in terms of caring for Karen outside of the house and, traveling with all the equipment and such, I think it made it possible for us to do caregiving in another environment, which was
Mhm.
also a type of, respite. We
Yeah,
were changing
yeah.
scenarios, and it made it very different and gave us some sort of a rejuvenating experience because it
Mhm.
wasn't the same as our normal. And I do think that each person should really consider like three circles, like what is their need and their need with regards to their child's needs, and
Mhm.
then figure out how would they feel about going away, and then consider the second circle, which is the circle of support, the immediate support. If they have family, friends, other parents in the same maybe childcare program that have the same syndrome or the same type of disabilities, that would be interested maybe in swapping care for a weekend, so one family can go in one weekend and the other can go in another. And the last kind of circle is what are the benefits or the plans that they have from the state, because as I mentioned earlier, we had a clear understanding that our need is greater than the services that we are receiving. And
Mhm.
then if you can identify that as a family, whether it's just for the purpose of going on a respite retreat at a Mother's Rest, for example, or you can at least start acting upon it, because as one of my friends, Jamie, once told me, one time you would need the respite to go on a retreat. The other time you might find yourself in the hospital, not being able to like care for your child. You need to have
Exactly.
the system set in place.
Yes.
So I think that those three levels of considerations would really help you make a decision, like what would make me feel rested and
Right.
able to continue carrying on with my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Many things to think about. Many things to think about. All legitimate, all normal, and we just need to keep talking about it.
Yep. Alma, thank you so much. Another unexpected episode of the truth about raising kids with disabilities. As always, the raw and honest truth. That's what you're getting here.
That's right.
Thank you for everyone for joining us and listening in. And we'll see you, I guess, next time.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
For more information, please go to www.twomomsnofluff.com. Thank you.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe and give it a 5-star rating so more people can hear it. Thank you.